Ladies and gentlemen, chess is a hard game. That's why there's an ELO system. The highest ELO ever achieved by a human is 2,881 by Magnus Carlsen. The lowest ELO ever achieved by a human is 100, because the ELO system doesn't go any lower than that. So 200 level chess generally is quite poor. In fact, 200 level chess inspired me to make a playlist here on YouTube called How to Lose at Chess. You should watch those other videos as well. But today, I'm going to be showing you a game that was absolutely genius. This is a breathtaking display of skill played by two individuals right at around that 200-300 ELO range. This game was sent to me a few months ago by an individual named Adam. And, well, I don't really have much else of an intro. Let's jump into this absolutely breathtaking display of chess ability, intellect, beauty, and wit by the innocent 200 ELO player and Adam. The game begins with pawn to e4, and the brilliance already begins on the first move of the game as Adam breaks away from traditional chess principles and plays a hypermodern, neo-fashionable opening, the Aljochen's defense, which is an opening where you disregard opening principles. You do not put pawns in the center of the board to control space. In fact, you actually induce moves like pawn to e5 from your opponent, which would attack your knight and kick it out into the middle of the board. The move knight to f6 is known as the Aljochen's defense. And the best move against it is to play the move e5. Black rotates around and then tries to undermine the pawn. White here plays already a gambit, bishop to c4. This is known as the 200 ELO gambit, and you have actually given up the pawn on e4 completely. But you are doing it because you are baiting your opponent in, and then you would like to set up a scholar's mate. You're actually not exactly losing the pawn if you find the sequence bishop f7, king f7, queen h5, check, king g8, queen d5, e6, queen takes e4, but I'm not really sure that that was really White's idea. And for that reason here, Adam plays the move e6, which, by the way, already completely puts to bed all scholars' mate opportunities, because the queen and the bishop now cannot even team up on the f7 square, given that the bishop is now blunted. Well, that does not stop our protagonist with the white pieces, who still plays the move queen to f3 after 2 seconds of thought. 200 ELO autopilot does not allow you to adapt to your surroundings, and it can prove fatal, because even though the queen does not even see the pawn and the bishop does not even see the pawn, you still go for it. Now, black could play pawn to d5 here, bishop out. Black plays the move pawn to b6, which is trying to play bishop b7, which would then counterattack the queen in the center. White here does not go for pawn to e5, which would simply be a bad move, attacking the knight and the rook at the same time. And instead, white plays d4. I don't really hate the move d4. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. 2 pawns in the center of the board is what every single 200 ELO player should be shooting for. And now we have the move bishop to b7. Bishop b7 puts pressure on the pawn on e4 like this, and white has a couple of ways of defending it. White can defend it with the bishop. White could defend it with the knight. White could defend it with the knight like this. White could also maybe push the pawn in the center of the board and block the bishop, or pin the knight to the queen. But none of that happens, and instead we have knight to e2, which is still a good move, developing and trying to castle the king. Black here, obviously with the last couple of moves, has aligned the pressure on the pawn on e4. And you would expect the move bishop takes e4 to come in, or you would expect the move knight takes e4 to come in, but instead black plays something even better, according to Stockfish, which is the move bishop to b4 check. Throwing in what is known as a Zwischenzug, an in-between move before taking the pawn on e4, because after all, it is not going anywhere. Now black plays knight c6, foregoing the plan of bishop takes pawn, blocking in their own bishop, but defending the bishop on b4, which frankly is all we could really hope for at this level. Now, white plays the move c3. It is not a good idea to leave your bishop out in the open like this among the enemy pawns, because your bishop could very easily get trapped. Black definitely should have relieved the pressure here, or taken first and then relieved the pressure, because now white plays an absolutely outstanding move and the bishop needs to absolutely retreat. The bishop doesn't retreat, however, and we have bishop to a5, and now the natural follow-up here is pawn to b4, simply rendering the bishop useless, and not just useless, but frankly dead, because pawn takes bishop will occur on the next move. But white has something else in store for us and plays the move pawn to e5, counter-attacking the knight in the center before the move b4 is played. Here, black plays a move which definitely looks like a blunder, but is actually an absolute brilliancy. Knight takes e5, spending about a minute of thought on that move, and it was a minute well spent. Knight takes e5 is a discovered attack on the queen by the bishop, a peekaboo, if you will. If pawn takes knight is played, bishop takes queen is played. If queen takes bishop is played, knight takes bishop is played, and black has won a pawn. But white does something even better. When you are faced with a trade of bishops, instead, you should just lose one or free. Knight takes bishop on the board, and Adam has struck with a discovered attack. The knight gallops out to g3. Now bishop takes g2 is on the way. Knight takes d2, knight takes b2, and the white position is absolutely falling apart. But when faced with the prospect of taking multiple free things, including the fact that you have just played multiple moves in a row with the knight, for some reason, our protagonist Adam gets a little bit scared of the disturbance of the arrival of the horse, and he plays the move pawn to g6. There is nothing inherently wrong with the move pawn to g6, but anytime you move up pawn to a light square, you have to remember that it used to stand probably on a dark square, unless it's the first move of the game. And now the dark squares are a little bit weak, and actually a fantastic move is played here by white, who plays queen to h6, and infiltration of the dark squares. The king is feeling a little bit unpleasant, but Adam does not miss an opportunity twice, gallops to the other side of the board, grabs an extra pawn with the sauce on the side to go, and forces the rook to move, and slides the bishop back to f3. Adam has a 5-point material advantage now, as early as the 12th move of the game, which is borderline decisive advantage for most of the elo ladder, but definitely not the elo ladder at the 200 level. White plays queen g7, an absolutely fantastic move, driving the queen into the territory. It's a really bad move because rook to g8 just defends everything, and now the queen is booted, and white continues to get absolutely punished over here. But black overreacts to the threat, which is why at this level of chess, you need to create as many threats as possible. Black completely overreacts, plays king to e7, and now has given up all of the advantage because the queen is defending the rook and the king is defending the knight. But a couple of moves ago, you took a little bit of careless attitude toward your dark squares, and after king to e7, white delivers bishop to g5, which is basically the kiss of death, because now white is going to play bishop f6 or queen f6, and it's going to be brutal. Bishop f6 wins the queen. You would expect the king needs to move or the queen needs to move. But if the queen moves, white gets 2 pieces to go, the king is out in the open, and probably it is mate to follow. So instead of that, our protagonist Adam plays the move d5, which not only loses the knight, but it also loses the queen. He had a good start to the game, but as all 200 and 300 elo games go, he has succumbed to the pressure, and he is probably going to lose. But you haven't seen nothing yet. Now, white is up a queen, so what should the queen do? Hunt. The queen should take as much free stuff as possible, or white should play moves like knight to d2, which target multiple things and get exchanges. And let's not forget that the move b4 is always possible. White just has a bishop that is going to die on the edge of the board at any moment. A queen needs a little bit of help, but in this case, the queen does not have help. The queen has just an army behind her. It's not even a matter of help. White in this position plays knight e2. So again, I say this in many of my videos. If you are watching this and you are a newbie, 8 or 9 times out of 10, the best move in the position is not going backwards. It is almost always possible to make a forward move in the position that does something and achieves something. Knight to e2. Knight to d2 is a very good move. Knight to e2 is not a good move. Knight to e2 does nothing. I mean, maybe you want to reroute the knight to f4, but you have not made any progress in your position. When you are up material in chess, you have to utilize the material that you are up. The bishop goes back to h5. As I said, the best move is often not going backwards. Knight f4 is a great move. Now we're going to take the bishop and we're going to trap the bishop. The more pieces that white can trade, the easier this game is going to get. Black plays h6. White doesn't even hesitate, grabs the bishop. Fantastic. Fantastic chess. Black here doesn't take the knight for some reason and attacks the queen. That's not a good move because the queen can just take the pawn, and now you can't take the knight because I take the rook. So you try to be fancy, but when you're dead lost, don't be fancy, okay? You got no customers coming to the restaurant. Stop making fancy food, all right? Your water's contaminated. Rook g8, not the best move, allows this, but now rook g7, and white is going to guarantee some exchanges. This is good technique. Now, of course, if black takes, I mean, it's bad news. If rook takes, you know, all of this is going to fall. Black plays the move king c6 here, which I don't really understand, but I don't understand this level of chess because they're too strong. Black now is simply going to lose the rest of these pawns with various checks. White now finds b4. That's really bad news. That was the move that was really up for question. And do you know why the only reason the 200 elo player found this move is because black moved in that direction. Look, folks, you don't lie to yourselves. That happens all the time. Your opponent makes a move on a side of the board and you go, oh, wait a minute, now I'm looking over there. I got no checks, but wait a minute, I got this. Yeah, pawn to b4. That's bad news. That's really bad news. Yep. Okay. Knight to d6. Pawn takes a5. And this is going to be quite clean. Or is it? In this position, Adam finds the backwards knight move fork. Ooh. Oh, that's brutal. White is going to be losing a rook, right? What is the best move here for white? White is caught in a fork. The queen and the rook are both under attack. So what is the best move? If you move the queen anywhere, your rook gets taken. So what do? You don't have any checks on this king. If you take this, you lose your queen. So what do you do? Rook takes rook. Because if they take your queen, you run out of the bank. You've made away with both of the rooks, and now you are completely winning. If they spend a moment doing this, now you just go here, and you are completely winning. Rook g1 is nothing. You just move your king. That is the way you have to calculate this position. That doesn't happen. White goes here. White loses a full rook. Now white almost has no advantage. White almost has no advantage in this position because the material balance is rook and a couple of pawns for a queen. But it's worse than that. It's the fact that now you probably have to move the queen again. Now the knight will move and the rook will get down here. And if your king and other pieces can't move, you're going to be in big trouble. Knight e8, queen e7, rook g1 check, and white is paralyzed. White now only has a mobile king, which is not what you want because the king he ain't that impressive. Now, black plays b5, which is a bad move because it allows queen c5 check, and now I can take your pawns. But white is obsessed with taking this pawn, which I don't blame at all. King d6 now playing defense. The queen grabs yet another pawn and queen e5 check is threatened. That is a fork. Is black going to blunder that? It is now a queen for a rook purely. It's 9-5. It's a 4-point material advantage for white. Knight to f6. Black has blundered queen e5 check. You're going to have to guard the knight, and I'm going to get in here, and then I'm going to get here. And the more pawns that fall, the more difficult this position is going to get to defend, because I might not be able to move a knight and a rook. But let me tell you something. When my a pawn gets rolling, when a pawn gets to the end of the other side of the board, it becomes a queen. So queen f7 is played instead. I don't hate this move, but now knight to e4, and we have a problem on our hands. We've got a problem on our hands because white can't move any pieces. But that doesn't stop white from moving a piece. And all of a sudden, white has lost the rook. However, black has 1 minute and 30 seconds on the clock. Will black, against all odds, be able to win this game down 7 minutes? Black in this position just has to take the rook. He tries to do this instead. Spends 27 seconds out of his 90 seconds remaining, which is a ridiculous time expenditure. Knight c3 hits the king, but now the king can walk up to the knight. And after this, white is going to have a queen and a knight, and that is more than enough to win the game. But white doesn't do that. White plays king to e3. King to e3, loses the rook in the corner, and now it is back to 2 rooks versus the queen. It's dead equal, but black only has 58 seconds on the clock. Queen to f6, the rook slides over to g8. He spent 30 more seconds on that move. Is this man absolutely out of his mind? What is he doing? Is he on plain internet? Rook to g8 played. Queen to h6 grabs the pawn. The rook gallops in. I mean, the white king is claustrophobic. He is suffering, but look at this. He's got very little movement here. Rook e2, rook d1 can weave a mating net, but there's almost no time on the clock. In fact, I don't even know what's happening here. It looks like black has lost on time? Wait, what is going on? Is that a malfunction? It must be a malfunction because black definitely didn't lose on time. All right, well, it looks like we're going to have a game played with 0-0-0 on the clock. Folks, I'm telling you, this is some sort of bug. This is not what I saw. Black definitely did not lose this game on time. So let's just pretend that every move black is making in about half a second, because that's basically what happened. White in this position plays knight to d2. Black still has no time on the clock. Rook e2, rook to d1 now is necessary. You got to take the knight. Knight b3, rook d1 check, knight d2, and now the game is over. The rooks swarm. The knight anchors both rooks. The pawn anchors the knight. This pawn anchors the king's escape. Rook d2, queen d2, rook d2, king d2. The game is over. Not because black has no time. That's a chess.com bug. I don't know what's going on there, but let's just keep it on the screen because it's very funny. e5. Perfect move. Pawn takes, knight takes. Pawn takes, king takes. Now, the way you win this game is white is going to try to promote over here. You've got to monitor this and disallow the king from taking all of your pawns. But that's very easy to do because you've got an eye on this. That's not getting through, and the king is fast enough to stop the pawns, and so is the knight. We have h4, we have d4. The pawn is trying to sneak away, but the king sneaks in, but now here comes pawn to f4. Knight takes a2, h6. The king stops the pawn. f5. The king stops that pawn. f6. The king stops that pawn too. c5. Black has no time remaining. Not literally. That's not what I'm trying to say. a6. King takes f6. The king has now been swarmed by the pawns. And Adam, the Grandmaster, playing beautiful Magnesian-style endgame technique, will now bring us home against all odds. Pawn to b3. But he has to avoid a stalemate. Is he good enough to avoid a stalemate? He's good enough to avoid a stalemate. King e5. d2. King a4. He makes a queen. But now the king is running to the opposite side of the board. You got to be really careful here, because if that king is able to get this, he's going to grab it, move and run. b2. King c6. Is it stalemate? No! And now Adam delivers the final touch. Queen to b6 check. And queen d to d6 stalemate on the 60th move of the game, and a draw, up 22 points of material.